I had just purchased a country home when my daughter called. In 1 hour, we will arrive. 20 of us. I couldn't stop staring at myself in the bathroom mirror of my new little house, as if the reflection might vanish if I blinked too hard. My cheeks were wet, my eyes were puffy, and my hands, thin, veined, and spotted with age, kept rising to wipe away the tears that refused to quit. They weren't sad tears. Not at first. They were the kind that come when your chest finally loosens after being clenched for years. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. 69 years old. 45 years married. 2 years since the funeral. 2 years of waking up and remembering again and again that the other side of the bed would stay empty. And now, somehow, against every practical opinion and every warning about what an older woman should do, I have done one selfish, beautiful thing. This house. It wasn't big. It wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. It had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a narrow hallway that creaked when you walked too quickly, and windows that looked out onto wide fields that shimmered in morning light. The paint was fresh, a soft creamy color that made the rooms feel warm even when the air was cool. The floorboards smelled like wood and clean vanish. The little kitchen had a sink that didn't drip and cabinets that actually closed without slamming. Out back, a small patch of soil waited like an unopened gift. Mine. Completely mine. I had scraped for it, penny by penny, year by year. I had said no to coffees and little treats and new shoes. I had mended clothes instead of replacing them. I had smiled through holidays where I bought gifts for everyone else and told myself I didn't need anything. The money had sat in its own quiet corner of my life like a secret promise. $5,000. It sounded like a joke when people talked about houses the way they did now, like they were buying candy bars. But in this town, with the right timing and a seller who needed to move, $5,000 could still buy a small slice of peace. That morning, I had eaten breakfast at my own table, listening to birds that sounded bold and cheerful, as if they were celebrating with me. I had watered the potted plants I'd bought in town. 2 small marigolds, a fern I wasn't sure would survive, and a tiny tomato starter that leaned too far to one side like it was shy. I'd placed my books on a shelf and imagined evenings in my rocking chair, the one I planned to put by the window where the late sun would fall. For a few perfect hours, my life felt like it belonged to me. Then the phone rang. I saw my daughter's name on the screen and felt the old reflexive warmth rise, the kind a mother can't seem to turn off even when she knows better. My thumb hovered over the green button, and I smiled like a fool, imagining her calling to say she was proud of me, or happy for me, or at least curious. She hadn't liked the idea of this house. She'd said it too many times to count. "Mom, it's a waste. You should stay in the apartment close to us. Close to us, so we can check on you. Close to us, so you're available." I pressed the answer anyway. "Hello, sweetheart," I said, letting all the softness I still had pour into my voice. There wasn't even a greeting on the other end. "Get ready," she said. "In an hour I'll be there with Jordan's family. Around 20 people. Make food and get rooms ready. We're staying 2 weeks." My brain didn't accept it at first. It just stalled. Like a car that's suddenly out of gas in the middle of an intersection. 20. I managed. The word came out thin. "Yes, 20. It's vacation time. They need somewhere free, and your place is perfect." My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles ached. "Honey, I just moved in today. I don't have groceries. I don't have." "Mom," she said, the way she said it when she wanted to shut down a conversation. "Don't be dramatic. This is family now. You have to welcome them properly." I could hear movement behind her voice, like she was walking while talking, busy with her own plans. She continued like she was reading from a list. "Jordan's cousin is bringing her 4 kids. His brother and the twins. His aunts are coming too. Everyone's excited. It'll be good for you. Good for me." A phrase that always meant the same thing. Good for them, because I would handle it. "But this is a 2-bedroom house," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. It's small. I can't fit. There are no excuses, she snapped. You're being selfish. Why would you buy a house if it isn't for the family to use? Honestly, Mom, you act like you live alone. Because I do, I wanted to say. Because I'm allowed to. But my throat tightened, and all that came out was, I need time. You have time, she said briskly. An hour. Make it work. And make sure there are clean towels. The kids want to swim at the lake. Also pack food for the ride back. See you. The call ended with a click that felt like a door slamming in my face. I stood in the middle of my bedroom holding the phone as if it had burned me. The room around me, my room, in my house, looked suddenly unfamiliar. A moment ago the cream-colored walls had felt like a hug. Now they felt like they were closing in, listening, judging. 20 people. 2 weeks. No asking. No, is it okay? No, do you have space? No, do you want company? Just a decision handed down like an order. I walked to the kitchen on legs that didn't feel quite connected to my body and opened the refrigerator, as if the cold light inside might offer some kind of miracle. 3 eggs. Half a jug of milk. 2 tomatoes. A small chunk of cheese. That was it. I opened a cabinet. A can of beans. A can of tuna. Half a bag of rice. Salt. Pepper. Oil. A single pack of crackers. I owned 4 plates. 4. My stomach hollowed out with a familiar dread. Not just panic. Something deeper. The sinking knowledge that this wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. This was who my daughter had become with me. Or maybe who she had always been. And I had trained myself not to see it. I thought of the day after the funeral, when the house still smelled like lilies and grief. I had been sitting on the couch staring at my hands, feeling like the world had been unplugged. She'd arrived with boxes and a brisk smile, her energy too loud for the quiet of death. Mom, you have to clear this stuff out, she'd said, already picking up my husband's books. It's depressing. We'll take some things off your hands. She'd taken half the shelves. She'd taken his watch. She'd taken the photo albums that made her sad. I had told myself it was normal, that she was helping, that I was being dramatic. I was numb. I didn't fight. Later, when I sold the apartment, she had demanded to manage the money. Said I was too old to understand finances, that she could make it grow. When I refused, she punished me with silence like I was a child who needed training. Now, on my first day in the only place I had ever owned outright, she was moving her husband's relatives into it like it was an empty rental. I sat on the edge of my new bed and stared at the sunlight on the floor. My chest hurt. I pressed a hand against it, breathing slowly, the way my doctor had told me to do when anxiety tightened my body like a knot. An hour. I could do nothing, and they would arrive anyway, and the chaos would swallow me. Or I could scramble, spend what little I had left, and still be insulted for not doing enough. My hands shook as I grabbed my purse and keys. I drove to town like my life depended on it, because in some quiet way, it did. The supermarket aisles blurred around me as I moved too fast, tossing basics into the cart. Rice, pasta, beans, canned sauce, cheap vegetables, bread, a pack of chicken thighs that made my jaw tighten at the price. I did math in my head until the numbers felt like stones. When the cashier told me the total, my throat tightened again. $200 and something. Nearly everything I had left until next month. I paid anyway, because fear can make you do reckless things while convincing you it's necessary. Back home, I unloaded bags with frantic hands, my house already feeling less like a sanctuary and more like a workplace. I boiled water, stirred pots, and chopped vegetables too fast. Tears dripped into the sink, and I didn't bother wiping them away. They weren't about onions. They were about anger so old it felt like part of my bones. I kept thinking about every time I had been needed, babysitting with no notice, lending money that never returned, cooking for surprise guests, giving rides. canceling my own appointments because someone else's problem was always louder than mine. It wasn't love. It was a pattern. And I had helped build it by saying yes. The sound of tires on gravel snapped my head up. Through the window, 3 cars rolled into my driveway like a parade. Doors opened. Children spilled out, shrieking with excitement. Adults laughed and stretched and reached into trunks for suitcases and coolers. Someone pointed toward the lake like they owned the view. My daughter stepped out last, smiling like she was arriving at a hotel she'd booked. "Mom," she called, waving as if everything was normal. "Come help with the bags." I opened the front door and felt the cool air rush past my ankles. The group turned toward me with expectant faces, the way people look at someone who is supposed to provide something. A woman in sunglasses bounced a baby on her hip and grinned. "Auntie," she chirped, even though I had never met her in my life. "This place is adorable. We're starving. I hope you made a ton of food." A man with a loud voice and an even louder laugh clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends. "Perfect spot for vacation," he announced. "Where do we sleep?" My daughter moved right past me into the house like she belonged there, talking as she walked. "Okay, so," she said, pointing. "Cousin Lena gets the master bedroom because the baby cries. Jordan and I will take the other room. Everyone else can use the living room. Mom, you can take the couch." The words hit me like cold water. The master bedroom was mine. I had placed my clothes in that closet hours ago. I had stood in that doorway imagining quiet mornings and slow evenings. And she had just reassigned it without even pausing. I looked at her. I looked at the crowd. I looked at my small living room, where bodies were already moving furniture with casual hands. Inside me, something shifted. Not loudly. Not like a dramatic explosion. More like a final thread snapping. My daughter turned and barked toward the kitchen. "Mom, food. The kids are hungry." I went back inside because habit is powerful, even when it hurts you. Plates clinked. My 4 plates vanished instantly. I found bowls. I found mugs. I served a small child pasta on the lid of a pot because there was nothing else left. People sat around my table eating with the careless confidence of guests who never considered the cost to the host. A man frowned at his portion. "This is it." I didn't notice. I started, but he waved a hand. "We get it, but you could have tried harder," he said, as if I had simply been lazy. "We drove a long way." My daughter nodded along like he was being reasonable. "Mom, really? You should have been prepared. Prepared for being invaded." Later, someone pressed a list into my hand. Diapers, formula, sunscreen, detergent, medicine. A list of things they expected me to buy. "I can't afford all this," I said, voice shaking. "Oh, come on," the woman laughed. "It's just basic stuff. You have savings. Don't be dramatic." Savings. They said it like it was a bottomless bucket, like my years of sacrifice were an unlimited resource meant for their comfort. In the yard, children trampled the little tomato plant I had placed so carefully that morning. I watched it bend and snap beneath a sneaker and felt something sour rise in my throat. That night, when the house finally quieted, not into peace, but into exhaustion, I lay on the couch with my back aching and stared at the ceiling. Bodies filled the rooms. Snores rose and fell. Someone's phone glowed from the floor where they'd fallen asleep watching videos with sound still faintly playing. My house didn't feel like mine anymore. I pressed my hand against the cushion beneath me, feeling the cheap fabric, and I thought about how small my life had become while I was busy making everyone else comfortable. Somewhere around dawn, the answer arrived with a clarity that made my eyes sting again. I had lost control in tiny pieces, over years. Every time I swallowed my anger. Every time I ignored the discomfort. Every time I said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. But control wasn't a one-time gift you either had or didn't. It was something you could take back. When I finally stood up at sunrise, my joints crackling, my hair a mess, and my heart tired but strangely steady, I walked to the kitchen and began making coffee with hands that didn't shake as much. Voices started again, demands spilling into the morning like dirty water. Where's breakfast? Do you have real coffee? We need to go shopping. Get the towels. Can you wash the baby's clothes? Pick up beer and cigarettes too. I listened to it all with a face that didn't reveal what had changed. Because in my mind, I could see the small law office sign I'd noticed yesterday in town, and I could feel something that hadn't lived in my chest for a long time. Not fear. Not guilt. A calm plan. I picked up my purse and keys. I'll go into town, I said softly. Everyone relaxed, satisfied, assuming the old version of me was still in charge. But as I stepped out the front door and breathed the cool morning air, I realized something with a quiet, steady certainty. I wasn't going to the supermarket first. And the next time I walked back into my own home, I was going to walk in as the owner of the house, of my money, and of my life. I drove with the windows cracked, letting the cold air sting my cheeks. Behind me, my driveway had turned into a noisy camp of coolers and suitcases. Ahead, the road stretched between quiet fields, and with every mile, my hands steadied on the steering wheel. It was strange how silence could feel like medicine. At the edge of town, I passed the supermarket they expected me to visit. The thought of pushing a cart for other people's comfort while my own account drained made my stomach knot. I kept going. A small cafe sat on the corner with fogged windows and a hand-painted sign. For once, I didn't rush. I parked, shut off the engine, and sat for a moment with my forehead against the wheel, breathing until my pulse slowed. Inside, warmth wrapped around me. Coffee smell, toasted bread, soft chatter. A bell chimed when I opened the door. The woman behind the counter looked up with the tired kindness of someone who had seen every kind of day. "Table for one?" she asked. "One," I said, and the word felt like a small treasure. I chose a booth by the window. She set down a mug that steamed and studied me for a second. "You look like you're carrying something heavy." "Family," I admitted. Her mouth tilted in a knowing way. "That'll do it." I stared at the coffee and let the truth spill out in pieces. "They came without asking. 20 people. They want 2 weeks. They expect me to feed them. Buy supplies. Give up my room." The waitress blinked. 20. I nodded, embarrassed by the sound of it, as if I had invented it. "Honey," she said softly, "that's not a visit. That's a takeover." The bluntness hit like a slap and a hug at the same time. My eyes stung. "I keep thinking it's my fault," I whispered. "Like I should have predicted it." "No," she said firmly. "You can't predict rudeness. You can only decide what you'll allow." When she walked away, her words stayed with me. Allow. I had spent years confusing allowing with loving. I pulled my purse beside me and opened my little notebook. My pen hovered, then I wrote one sentence in careful letters. "I have the right to say no in my own house." Seeing it on paper steadied me more than the coffee. I paid and stepped back into the cold, holding that sentence in my mind like a match. 2 blocks away was the modest office with the plain sign I'd noticed the day before. Jeremy Stone, attorney at law. My heart hammered as if I were about to commit a crime instead of ask for help. I heard my daughter's voice in my head, "Don't be dramatic," then pushed the door open anyway. The waiting room smelled faintly of paper and lemon cleaner. A man behind the desk stood when I approached. Thinning hair, calm eyes, patient posture. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I need advice," I said. "About family. About my home." "I'm Jeremy Stone," he replied. "Come on back." His office was tidy and warm, with framed diplomas, a small lamp, and shelves of thick books. He gestured to a chair. I sat, gripping my purse like armor. "Take your time," he said. "Tell me what's happening." So I did. The phone call. The surprise arrived. The demands for food, towels, diapers, beer. The way my daughter assigned bedrooms as if she were the owner. The criticism of what I cooked with money I didn't have. The old memories that rose like ghosts. The day after my husband's funeral when she packed his books into boxes without asking. The month of silence when I refused to hand her my sale money to manage. The way every help came with a hook. Jeremy listened without interrupting. He took notes but kept his eyes on me, as if what mattered most was that I felt real instead of invisible. When I finished, my throat burning, he leaned back. "Mrs. Albright," he said, "what you're describing is exploitation." I flinched. "They're just pushy," I tried. "Pushy is asking for a weekend," he replied. "This is taking over your home, pressuring you to spend beyond your means, and using guilt to force you into it. That's financial and emotional abuse, even when it's family." The word abuse felt too big, too harsh, like it belonged to some other woman's life. Yet the more he spoke, the more I recognized myself in his calm explanation. I had been minimizing for years because it was easier than admitting I was being used. "What can I do?" I asked, the question tasting like fear and hope. "You can set boundaries," he said. "And you can enforce them. Legally, your house is your private property. You decide who stays and on what terms. If you ask someone to leave and they refuse, they're trespassing." Trespassing. The word sounded ridiculous attached to my own daughter. And yet, if a stranger did what she was doing, I would have called the police without hesitation. Jeremy slid a sheet of paper toward me. "There are a few approaches. The simplest is to tell them to leave. If you're worried they'll argue, put it in writing. If you're willing to allow them to stay, treat it like lodging. Require contributions for food and utilities. Set house rules. Quiet hours. Cleaning expectations. Limits on guests." My fingers twisted around my purse strap. "They'll say I'm greedy. They'll say whatever helps them keep access," he answered. "Their reaction doesn't decide what's fair. Your needs do." He opened a folder and pulled out a form. "If you want, I can draft a short agreement. Simple language. It gives you something to point to instead of debating every sentence." I swallowed. "They hate paperwork." Jeremy's mouth lifted. "Most people who rely on guilt do." We talked about numbers. Food costs. Utility use. Wear and tear. He asked what I could afford. Admitting the truth made my cheeks burn. After the house and moving, I had almost nothing to spare. I had already spent hundreds trying to feed them for one day. "Your time is worth something too," he added. "If they expect laundry and cooking like a service, they either pay or they do it themselves." My time. I had never allowed myself to value it. I had treated it like something I owed. By the time I left, I carried a thin folder that felt heavier than it looked. Inside was a printed notice and a basic lodging agreement with clear options. Contribute fairly, follow rules, or leave. He had also written down calm phrases that didn't invite arguments. The bank was my next stop. I needed facts. The lobby was quiet, and the manager's face tightened when he saw my recent expenses. "In less than 2 days," he said carefully, "you've spent over $500. My stomach dropped anyway. Numbers made the situation undeniable. "These expenses are unusual," he added. "Are you being pressured?" The question, asked so plainly, nearly broke me. I didn't lie this time. I told him briefly, about the crowd in my house and the demands. He nodded, not surprised. "We can set alerts. Spending limits. Extra confirmation for large purchases. It won't solve family problems, but it can protect your account." "Do it," I said. "Please." When I left, my phone chimed with a test alert. A small alarm system around my life. I went to the supermarket last, and I bought only what I would have bought for myself. Rice, beans, pasta, eggs, a few vegetables, and bread. No beer. No cigarettes. No barbecue meat for 30 people. I spent $50 and felt a strange pride in the restraint. On the drive back, My shoulders tightened when I saw the cars still in my driveway and the front door standing open like my house had no boundaries. Voices spilled out, loud and entitled. I touched the folder on the passenger seat and reminded myself, I own this place. Inside, the living room looked like a disaster zone. Blankets and bags everywhere. Shoes on my coffee table. Children racing through my hallway. Someone's music playing from a phone. My daughter's voice cut through the noise. There you are, she snapped, as if I'd been late to a job. It took you long enough. The kids are starving. A man lounging on my sofa grinned. Did you bring the beer? And cigarettes? Another voice called. And meat? Someone shouted from the kitchen. We're having a barbecue this weekend. I set my grocery bags down slowly. I brought basic food, I said. My daughter blinked. Basic. Rice, beans, pasta. Enough so no one goes hungry. The room went still for half a breath. That's it, she demanded. Mom, you know they expect real meals. Lena, baby on her hip, stepped forward. What about diapers and formulas? She asked. I gave you a list. I didn't buy those, I said. The silence that followed felt thick. Noah pushed himself upright, eyes narrow. Why not? Because I can't afford it, I replied, and my voice surprised me with its calm. I bought this house with my savings. I have very little left. My daughter's face hardened. Don't start with your poor me act. You always find money when it matters. This is what I have, I said, pulling out my bank statements and laying them on the coffee table. In 2 days, I've spent over $500. I have less than $300 left until next month. They leaned in, scanning the numbers like they expected a hidden trick. Confusion flickered, then irritation, because facts were inconvenient. That can't be right, someone muttered. It's right, I said. My daughter snatched the paper and read faster, then looked up at me like I had insulted her. So what? She snapped. You're just going to let us starve? Embarrass us? I'm not letting anyone starve, I answered. There's food. But I'm not funding a vacation I didn't agree to. Jordan stepped forward with his practiced smile. Mother-in-law, he began. We're family. We don't keep score. Family also doesn't show up with 20 people and demand a 2-week stay without asking, I said. My daughter scoffed. Oh please. Don't get dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, I said. I'm being clear. I reached into my purse again and pulled out the folder. Just holding it changed the air in the room, like they sensed something new. I went to speak to a lawyer this morning, I said. Every head snapped toward me. A lawyer? My daughter repeated, scandalized. Yes, I said. Because I needed to understand my rights. This is my home. And if you want to stay here, there will be terms. The eruption was immediate. Voices overlapped. Someone laughed like it was a joke. Someone called me greedy. Someone shouted that I was humiliating the family. My daughter's eyes filled with sudden practiced tears, and she hissed, Dad would be ashamed of you. The old me would have folded. The old me would have apologized until my throat hurt. Instead, I felt my spine straighten. Your father worked his whole life so I wouldn't be left helpless, I said quietly. He would never have wanted me to be used. Noah stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mary, you don't understand what you're doing. There are a lot of us. You're alone. I met his eyes. Are you threatening me in my own home? I asked. He hesitated. No. I'm just saying, don't make this ugly. It will be simple, I said, and I opened the folder. I placed the agreement on the coffee table. Here are the options, I told them, voice steady. Contribute fairly and respect my house rules, or leave. My daughter stared at the paper like it was poison. The room buzzed with disbelief, anger, and the first flicker of uncertainty. Then, over the noise, the front door creaked. A woman stood there with a basket of vegetables on her arm, gray hair in a neat bun, eyes sharp and curious. She took in the crowded living room, the tension, the papers on the table, and my daughter's red face. "Oh," she said politely. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm Martha, your neighbor. I came to welcome you." My daughter snapped, "We're busy," but Martha's gaze landed on me, and in it I saw immediate understanding, the kind that older women recognize in each other without words. "What a big family," Martha said lightly, stepping in. "It must be expensive to host so many. I hope everyone's contributing." The silence that followed was sharp. Martha's eyebrows lifted. "They're not?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "Oh dear. In my family, if you visit an elder, you bring groceries or money. You don't drain their pension and call it love." A few people shifted, uncomfortable. My daughter's mouth opened, then closed. Martha looked at me again, gentler now. "Honey, are you okay?" I nodded once, the smallest movement. "I'm trying to be," I said. Martha set her basket down like she belonged there more than they did. "Good," she replied. "Because from what I'm seeing, you've been taken advantage of." Her words landed in the room like a judge's hammer. Faces tightened. Pride flared. And for the first time, my daughter looked around and realized a stranger could see exactly what she was doing. I held my ground, feeling that sentence from my notebook burn steady in my chest. For a moment nobody spoke. Lena bounced the baby, eyes darting to the door as if calculating escape routes. Jordan's uncle cleared his throat and stared at the floor. Noah's jaw worked like he was chewing anger. My daughter's tears dried almost instantly, replaced by a cold glare that promised punishment later. She leaned close enough that only I could hear her. "You're going to regret this," she whispered. "You'll need us one day." Martha stepped between us without raising her voice. "If you're visiting, you speak with respect," she said. Then she turned to me. "Do you want me to stay?" I looked at the crowded room, the papers on my table, the open door behind Martha like a path to air. "Yes," I said. "Stay, please. I have the right to say no." And this time, I meant it. Martha's presence changed the room in a way I hadn't expected. She didn't raise her voice or scold anyone. She simply stood there, calm and solid, like a witness who refused to look away. And somehow, that was more unsettling to them than shouting would have been. My daughter straightened her shoulders and forced a smile that looked painful to hold. "This is a private family discussion," she said, stiffly polite. "We don't need outside opinions." Martha tilted her head. "Funny," she replied. "From where I'm standing, it looks like a woman in her own home is being overwhelmed by guests who arrived without asking. That stopped being private the moment it turned into exploitation." The word hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Jordan's uncle laughed awkwardly. "Now, let's not exaggerate. Nobody's exploiting anyone." I finally spoke again, and my voice surprised me. It was steady. "Then it should be easy to contribute," I said. "If no one is exploiting me, paying a fair share shouldn't be a problem." My daughter spun toward me. "Mom, this is humiliating. You're turning this into a spectacle." "No," I replied quietly. "You did that when you arrived with 20 people and demands." For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Not guilt, something closer to fear. Fear that the story she had always told herself about me was cracking. Fear that the version of me who apologized for existing was no longer available. Jordan stepped in, arms crossed. "Let's be practical," he said. "What exactly do you want?" I slid the agreement fully onto the table. "I want respect. And I want to stop spending money I don't have. If you stay, these are the terms." He scanned the page, his eyebrows inching upward with every line. $100 per room per night, he scoffed. 50 per person per day for meals? That's insane. It's cheaper than a hotel, Martha said calmly. And hotels don't wash your clothes or cook for you, I added. My daughter slapped the paper down. You can't be serious. I am, I said. The room erupted again, but this time the noise felt different. Less confident. More frantic. This is elder abuse in reverse, someone shouted. You've lost your mind, Noah said. This house has gone to your head. Jordan shook his head like he was disappointed in a child. Mary, be reasonable. We can chip in a little. Maybe a couple hundred total. Symbolic. Symbolic doesn't buy groceries, I replied. And it doesn't pay for electricity, water, or my peace. Emily clutched her baby closer, eyes glossy. You'd really throw us out? With the children. I looked at her carefully. You arrived without asking, I said. You assumed I would provide everything. That wasn't my choice. I'm not throwing anyone out, I'm declining to be used. My daughter stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Who put these ideas in your head? No one, I said. I finally listened to myself. Martha nodded approvingly. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Then the children burst in from the yard, muddy and loud, unaware of the emotional standoff they had interrupted. Grandma, I'm hungry, one of them cried. The sound went straight to my heart. I felt the old instinct surge, to rush, to fix, to feed. But I stopped myself. Slowly, deliberately, I turned to their parents. Your children are hungry, I said. The kitchen is there. You're welcome to cook for them. Emily blinked. You're not making lunch. No, I replied. But you always. Not today. The shock on their faces was almost comical, as if I had just announced that gravity no longer applied. My daughter exhaled sharply. This is unbelievable. I met her gaze. What's unbelievable, I said, is how normal this has felt for so long. Jordan's uncle muttered something about disrespect. Noah grabbed his jacket. I'm not staying somewhere I'm treated like this, he snapped. Then you should leave, I said. And there it was. The line I had never crossed before. My daughter gasped. Mom. I mean it, I said. If these terms don't work for you, you're free to go. All of you. The silence that followed felt vast. Even the children sensed something had shifted and quieted. Jordan looked around at the others, calculating. He leaned toward my daughter and whispered something I couldn't hear. Her jaw clenched. She shook her head once, then turned back to me, eyes hard. You're choosing money over family, she said. I felt sadness then, but not guilt. I'm choosing myself, I replied. For the first time. Her lips trembled, then flattened. Fine, she said coldly. If that's how you want it. She turned sharply. Everyone, start packing. We're leaving. Emily sputtered. Leaving. Where are we supposed to go? We'll figure it out, my daughter snapped. I'm not staying here to be insulted. Suitcases appeared like magic. People moved faster now, anger fueling their efficiency. Drawers opened and slammed. Coolers were dragged across the floor. Someone knocked over a chair and didn't bother to set it upright. As they packed, the insults came in quieter tones, like poison meant to linger. She's always been selfish. This house changed her. She'll regret this when she's alone. I stood still in the center of the room and let the words pass through me. They are no longer stuck. They slid off like rain. At the door, my daughter stopped. She turned back, eyes sharp. Don't call me when you need help, she said. Don't expect anything from us. I won't, I replied. And I meant it. She stared at me, searching for the familiar crumble. It didn't come. With a scoff, she turned and left. One by one, the cars pulled out of the driveway. The noise faded. Dust settled. And then, silence. Not the tense silence from before. Real silence. I stood there, my house echoing slightly now that it was empty again. My living room was a mess. Blankets on the floor. Crumbs everywhere. A faint smell of beer and sunscreen hung in the air. My back ached. My heart felt bruised. But beneath all that was something new. Relief. Martha exhaled softly. "Well," she said. "That was something." I laughed, a small, shaky sound that surprised me. "I think I just aged 10 years. Or got 10 years back," she replied. I looked around, suddenly embarrassed. "I'm sorry you had to see all that." She waved a hand. "I'm glad I did. No one should face that alone." We cleaned together in companionable silence. She swept while I gathered dishes. The work felt different now. Not frantic. Not desperate. Just necessary. When the house was passable again, Martha insisted I sit. She made tea with the ease of someone who knew where things were without asking. "You did the right thing," she said, handing me a mug. "I'm terrified," I admitted. She smiled gently. "That's normal. Courage doesn't erase fear. It just walks through it." That night, after Martha left, I slept in my bed. My bed. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and lavender soap. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind move through the fields outside, and felt something settle inside me. I hadn't lost my family that day. I had lost my illusion of them. In the weeks that followed, the quiet returned in full. My mornings were slow. Coffee on the porch. Birds arguing in the trees. Dirt under my fingernails as I planted new seedlings where the tomatoes had been crushed. My daughter didn't call. And that hurt more than I expected. But the pain was clean. Honest. Not the constant ache of being used. I joined a painting class at the community center. I laughed with women who asked about my life and listened when I spoke. Martha and I shared meals and stories. My house filled with warmth again, but this time, it was the right kind. Months later, my phone rang. It was my daughter. Her voice was careful. "Mom, are you okay?" "I am," I said. A pause. "I need a favor." There it was. The old pattern knocking. "I can't help with that," I replied gently. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "You've changed." "Yes," I said. "I have." She hung up. I sat quietly afterward and didn't feel crushed. I felt grounded. That morning, I watered my garden. The new tomato plants were strong, their stems thick, their leaves wide and green. I smiled at the thought that growth sometimes requires clearing space, even when it hurts. I had learned something late in life, but not too late. Love without respect is not love. And peace, once claimed, is worth protecting. The days that followed settled into a rhythm so gentle it felt unreal. I woke without the sound of footsteps in my hallway or voices demanding breakfast. The silence was no longer heavy or suspicious. It was clean, honest. I could sit at my kitchen table with my coffee and let it cool while I stared out the window, thinking about nothing in particular. No one scolded me for wasting time. No one asked what I was making for lunch. At first, the quiet felt fragile, as if it might shatter the moment I relaxed too much. Years of living on alert had trained my body to expect interruption. I would stand in the garden pulling weeds and suddenly tense, convinced I heard a car in the driveway. Each time, it was only the wind, or a bird landing too hard on the fence. Slowly, my shoulders learned to drop again. I cleaned my house thoroughly, not out of panic but out of care. I wiped down surfaces that had been touched without permission, laundered blankets that had never been offered, and aired out rooms that had absorbed the noise of entitlement. With each chore, I felt as if I were reclaiming square inches of my life. When the last load of laundry finished, I folded it neatly and placed it in the closet that belonged to me alone. In the afternoons, I walked the dirt road behind my house. The fields changed color with the sun, and sometimes I stopped just to breathe, letting the wide sky remind me how small my old fears really were. I hadn't realized how cramped my world had become until it opened again. Martha stopped by often, sometimes with bread, sometimes with gossip, sometimes just to sit. She never overstayed. She never assumed. She asked before touching anything, even a chair. That simple courtesy moved me more than any grand declaration of love ever had. We talked about ordinary things, her late husband's stubbornness, my attempts at gardening, the quirks of the town. Slowly, laughter returned to my voice without effort. One afternoon, while I was repainting an old wooden stool, I caught myself humming. The sound startled me. I hadn't hummed in years. I set the brush down and let the tune continue, soft and unashamed, filling the room. It felt like proof that something inside me had healed enough to make music again. The painting class became a highlight of my week. At first, I worried I would be clumsy or foolish, that my hands would shake too much to hold a brush. But no one there cared about perfection. We painted bowls of fruit, sunsets, and memories from childhood. One woman painted the ocean she missed. Another painted a kitchen table where her children used to gather. When it was my turn to explain my work, I surprised myself by saying, "This is my house," and realizing I meant more than the building. Some evenings were harder than others. Loneliness still crept in, especially at night when memories surfaced uninvited. I missed my husband's breathing beside me, the way he used to reach for my hand in his sleep. I missed the version of my daughter I once believed in. But the pain no longer came with the sharp edge of humiliation. It was grief, honest and deserved, and I allowed myself to feel it without turning it into self-blame. The first letter from my daughter arrived 2 months later. It was short, written in careful, formal handwriting, as if emotion might leak through the page if she wasn't vigilant. "I hope you're well. We were surprised by your behavior. It hurt us deeply. I think you should reflect on what happened. Families should support each other." There was no apology. No acknowledgement of the burden she had placed on me. Just the familiar demand that I examine myself instead of her actions. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Silence, I was learning, was also a boundary. As spring deepened, my garden flourished. The tomato plants grew tall and sturdy, their stems thick from careful tending. When the first green fruit appeared, I touched it like a miracle. I shared the harvest with Martha and with a couple from down the road who always waved when I passed. Giving felt different now. It felt chosen, not extracted. One morning, while I was watering the beds, a car slowed near my driveway. My heart skipped, old reflexes flaring. Then I recognized the vehicle. It was a local woman from painting class. She rolled down her window and smiled. "I heard you grow the best tomatoes," she joked. "Thought I'd see for myself." I laughed and invited her in. We sat on the porch drinking lemonade, talking about paint colors and recipes. When she left, she thanked me 3 times, as if my hospitality were a gift instead of an obligation. I watched her drive away and realized I was smiling without effort. The phone rang less often. When it did, I no longer felt the rush of dread. Sometimes it was Martha. Sometimes it was someone from class. Once, it was my daughter again. Her voice sounded tired. "Mom, can you watch the kids this weekend?" "I can't," I said gently. A pause. "Why not?" "Because I have plans," I replied, even though my plans were simple. Painting, walking, resting. Plans no less valid for being quiet. "You always say that now," she snapped. "Yes," I said. "I do." She hung up. I sat with the silence afterward and noticed how my chest didn't tighten the way it used to. Disappointment passed through me, but it didn't lodge itself inside. I had learned the difference. Later that week, I took a day trip to the lake by myself. I packed a small lunch and a book and sat by the water, letting the sun warm my arms. Families laughed nearby. Children splashed. For once, I didn't feel like I was missing something by being alone. I felt present. Whole. I thought about how many years I had believed love required sacrifice without limit. How I had confused endurance with virtue. How I had worn myself down trying to earn affection that should have been freely given. The realization didn't make me bitter. It made me grateful that I had finally stopped running in place. That night, I wrote in my notebook again. Not lists or worries this time, but truths. I am allowed to rest, I am allowed to say no, I am allowed to choose peace. I underlined the last sentence twice. Summer arrived gently. My house is filled with light and air. I rearranged furniture just because I could, moving the rocking chair to catch the evening breeze. I hung my paintings on the walls, imperfect and proud. Each one felt like a marker of survival. One afternoon, a package arrived. Inside was a small photo frame. It held a picture of my husband and me from years ago, smiling on a windy day, hair a mess, eyes bright. My daughter had written a note on the back in careful ink. I found this while cleaning. Thought you might want it. No apology. No explanation. Just a small olive branch wrapped in caution. I placed the photo on my bedside table. I didn't call her. Not yet. Healing didn't mean rushing back into old patterns. It meant moving forward at my own pace. Months passed. The sharpness of the conflict dulled, leaving clarity in its place. I no longer replayed arguments in my head at night. When I thought of my daughter, it was with sadness, not longing. I hoped she would change, but I no longer waited for it. One evening, Martha and I sat on the porch watching the sun sink into the fields. Fireflies blinked in the grass like tiny signals. You know, she said, people think standing up for yourself is loud. But it's usually quiet. It's just deciding you won't abandon yourself anymore. I nodded. I didn't know how tired I was until I stopped. She smiled. That's how it goes. When I went inside that night, I moved through my house slowly, touching door frames, counters, and the back of the sofa. Not to reassure myself it was still there, but to appreciate it. This place had become more than shelter. It was a declaration. I slept deeply, dreamless and calm. In the morning, I woke to birdsong and sunlight spilling across the floor. I brewed coffee, opened the windows, and stepped into the garden barefoot. The earth was cool and steady beneath me. I breathed in and felt strong. I didn't know what the future would bring. I might grow older alone. I might reconnect with my daughter in a healthier way, or I might not. But for the first time in my life, those possibilities didn't terrify me. Because whatever came next, I would meet it from a place of dignity. And that, I had learned, was more than enough. Autumn arrived quietly, as if it didn't want to disturb the peace I had built. The mornings grew cooler, and a thin mist settled over the fields like a veil. I wrapped myself in a cardigan on the porch and watched the sun rise later each day, unhurried, patient. There was comfort in that rhythm. Nothing demanded me. Nothing pulled at my sleeves. I started keeping my notebook by the kettle. Not because I was anxious, but because thoughts came now that were worth keeping. Small reflections. Memories I had avoided for years because they hurt too much. I found that when I faced them on my own terms, they softened. I wrote about my husband, about the way he used to whistle while fixing things, how he always cut apples the same careful way, how he believed kindness was strongest when it included self-respect. I realized then how much of my old self I had buried after he died. Not just grief, but permission. Permission to take up space without apology. One afternoon, while sorting old papers, I found a receipt tucked inside a book. It was from years ago, for a pair of shoes I had wanted badly but never bought. I remembered standing in the store, holding them, calculating how many groceries that money could buy for someone else. I put them back and told myself I didn't need them. The memory made me laugh softly now, not bitterly, but with understanding. I had done the best I knew how at the time. That mattered. With Martha's encouragement, I volunteered at the community library twice a week. It was quiet work, shelving books, helping children find stories, chatting with other volunteers. One boy always asked for books about gardens. When I told him I grew tomatoes, his eyes widened like I'd revealed a secret superpower. I brought him a small basket one day, and he thanked me with solemn seriousness that made my chest ache in the best way. Giving felt right again when it wasn't demanded. The town began to feel like a place I belonged, not just somewhere I lived. People waved when they passed my gate. Someone fixed my fence without asking for payment, just a slice of pie. I learned names. I learned stories. And I learned that community wasn't built on obligation, it was built on choice. Late one evening, as leaves scraped softly along the porch steps, my phone rang. I stared at it longer than usual. My daughter's name glowed on the screen. I didn't feel panic this time. I felt ready. "Hello," I said. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. "Hi, Mom." We sat in silence for a few seconds. I didn't rush to fill it. "I heard from Aunt Carol," she said finally. "She said you're different." I smiled faintly. "I suppose I am." "She said you're happy," my daughter added, and there was something uncertain in her tone. "I am," I said simply. Another pause. Then, "I didn't expect you to be." The honesty surprised me. "Why not?" I asked. "I thought you'd be lonely," she admitted. "I thought you needed us." I looked out the window at the dark fields. The steady outline of my home reflected faintly in the glass. "I needed respect," I said. "I still do." Her breath caught. "You think I don't respect you?" "I think you didn't," I replied gently. "And I think that mattered." Silence stretched again, heavier this time. When she spoke, her voice trembled. "You embarrassed me." "I know," I said. "But I was hurting." "You didn't say anything before," she said, almost accusing. "I did," I replied. "You just couldn't hear it because it was inconvenient." She let out a shaky laugh that wasn't humor. "You always were too quiet." "I'm learning not to be," I said. The line crackled softly. "I don't know how to talk to you like this," she confessed. "That's okay," I said. "We can learn. Or we can take time." Time. Another boundary. Offered without threat. She exhaled. "I'm not calling to ask for anything," she said quickly, as if she needed me to know that. "I just wanted to check." "I appreciate that," I said. When the call ended, I sat still for a long while. My heart felt tender, but not raw. Whatever came next with her would be built slowly, or not at all. Either way, I would not dismantle myself to make it happen. Winter crept in with frost and early darkness. I hung heavier curtains and learned to enjoy the hush of snow. My house felt especially safe then, like a small ship steady in a wide white sea. I baked bread just because I could. I read books late into the night. I painted with deeper colors, blues and grays and soft golds. On the first snowfall, Martha knocked on my door with 2 scarves and a grin. We walked the road together, our boots crunching in unison, our breath fogging the air. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel lighter," I replied. At night, I sometimes thought about the future in practical terms. What I would do if I became ill, how I would manage alone. Instead of fear, I felt prepared. I made plans. I wrote things down. I spoke to neighbors. Independence, I learned, wasn't isolation. It was clear. Near the end of winter, a small envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a card, simple and unadorned. "I'm sorry I didn't listen, I'm still learning." There was no signature, but I knew her handwriting. I didn't cry. I held the card for a long moment, then placed it in my notebook. Apologies didn't erase the past, but they could open a door, if both people were willing to walk through it carefully. Spring returned, and with it, green shoots pushing stubbornly through the soil. I planted again, kneeling in the dirt, hands steady. The garden didn't remember being trampled. It only knew how to grow. On a warm morning, I stood back and surveyed my yard, my house, my life. Nothing was perfect. But it was honest. And it was mine. I had not become harder. I had become clearer. And clarity, I had learned, was its own kind of peace.